Hello, I'm Shieldwall100 and welcome back to another 3rd edition Batman Miniatures game battle report. Today we're focusing on a confrontation between a Batman affiliated crew led by Commissioner Gordon and a crew of the Court of Owls faction. This is a faction that has been around for quite a while, but is now actually serviced by a new objective deck released very recently. I've printed it out and we're going to put it through its paces because it looks very thematic. Every time a new objective deck is released, it leads to some really interesting new possibilities for interactions between it and existing decks, and a new ability to use the models in ways they should be. And I think that putting it up against the Batman crew deck is a good way to sort of get a good feeling for how it works out in practice, because everyone knows what the Batman crew's deck's made of. So yeah, it'll give it a chance to shine in its own light, I think. Yes. Check the description link below for details of an offer from the Top Hatted Hamster web store. It's 10% off for your first or next purchase. I'm not affiliated with them, but they gave me the code and I thought it would be nice to pass on, so there it is. Check the description like I said. Please feel free to comment on anything you see that maybe I'm doing wrong, or anything really. Any feedback at all is appreciated, I assure you of that. Okay, let's get on and see the crews. Right, the Batman crew, this time, as I said, led by Commissioner Gordon, is displayed before you now. Commissioner Gordon representing a very different type of leader to any of the Batman variants you can get for obvious reasons, but he does come with his own unique suite of skills, and he frees up a lot of points to use elsewhere in the crew, of course, as well as being a much more supporting character in terms of the way he basically buffs the your police forces, as opposed to jetting off on his own and doing his own thing. To the right of Commissioner Gordon, you can see the next 3 models in Harvey Bullock, GCPD Cop 1 and Officer Merkel. They have been featured before in my reports and they are all pretty standard stuff. To Commissioner Gordon's front, you've got one of the SWAT officers you can take. I haven't used any SWAT yet in this in my reports, but this one is actually one of the original metal models. I'm using him as one of the resin replacements, shall we say, for them that came out later. I'm using this as Lorida. They basically got almost the same pose and the same armament, so I don't see any problem with that. He's got a custom submachine gun, so it's move and fire a lot. He's very, he's got good skills. He's slightly better than your average policeman, and adds a bit of much needed, teeth to the team, I think. As you can see, I've got Nightwing standing atop the Batmobile there, and newly for my battle reports, I'm using Huntress today because that crossbow packs a bit of a punch, and yes, she just seemed to fit the points very well. She's quite tough. She's willpower and endurance 7, which is quite standout, amongst other free agents of her rank, of her points bracket, shall I say. There's a smattering of purchasable war gear I'll go into as we go through the game as it's used, and yeah, that's it's looking like a different sort of gang to the ones I usually take. And making the debut for the Court of Owls crew, I have weighing in at exactly the same number of models as the Batman crew at 7. We have, starting with the leader, you can see there, centre right, we have the High Court member. This is a very different type of leader to any of the others, really. Even like organised crime and such have leaders who, although not physical powerhouses, they'll be sneaky, or they'll be very intimidating, or they'll have lots of resources to throw around. This guy isn't. He's very cheap in points, he's very modest in stat lines, and he's only got a few minor debuffs that can only really take effect when he's way too close to danger to be of any use anyway. So this is someone who will be at the back trying to keep himself out of the way and fulfill objectives where he can. To his right and our left is the High Court lady. I can't remember her exact name. It might actually be High Court Lady. But yes, she's likewise, she's the sidekick for the team and fulfills a very different role to many other sidekicks, such, for example, Nightwing for today's Law Forces. She won't be doing any of that. She is much better off. She buffs the owls nearby, but again, she doesn't want to be anywhere near danger herself. Kind of paradox, but again, she's cheap. She's cheaper even than the High Court member, and she can give them some useful abilities, and she is an absolutely amazingly stunningly good model. So she's in the crew regardless. Aesthetics over function for me all the time if I possibly can, especially on the channel, I think. On this level of the building you can also see Strix there, and what's his name? Oh, just the Talon, but he is William Cobb underneath all that gear. They, to the Talons, I'll brief you on them later, but if we go to the roof quickly, you can see the O'Malley's son, as in the son of the O'Malley's family, as another Talon for today. We have Henry Ballard, and finally, of course, the Gotham Butcher and his looming presence. All the Talons basically are variations on the theme of we're going to chase you down and stab you lots of times until you're dead, and they tend to do that quite well, but in subtly different ways. But I mean, most of their stats are generally in the 4s area. O'Malley tends to come in at 3s. He's the cheapest and least effective of the lot, but they're all quite tough. They all have bonuses to recover from being knocked out because of their reanimation serum that they've taken. And special word has to go out to the Gotham Butcher, of course, because he is just gigantic and brutal and nasty. In my opinion, he is possibly the worst culprit for Knight models of just being massively out of scale out of all of their model range. They generally, in my opinion, do a pretty good job of unifying scales across comic books, TV, real life TV actors, and computer game models. That's a bit of a tall order to get everything looking right and amongst the same figure line, but the Gotham Butcher stands out as being way too big. His arm is bigger than just about any of the other models on here, but I guess once they sculpted him, he is a really nice model for all apart from that. He's really, really good, really action-packed, and I guess they just didn't have it in him to start again. And maybe they didn't have the technology to scale him down. I don't know. I don't work for them, but yeah, he's big, and but I'm looking forward to seeing how this crew plays. So let's get on with it. Okay, the pre-game setup is now completed. For the deployment card, I drew Plunder, which, if I just show you, we've seen this one before. It's with 2 smaller rectangular deployment zones lengthways across the board. But if I bring that into focus, each side gets 2 suspect markers that they will be deploying on the board as well. Because of the kind of split nature of the deployment, I'm actually going to go through a little bit of both crew one at a time, just from what you can see from each side of the board. So on this side, you can see on the Court of Owls side, we have the High Court Lady, Strix, and the O'Malley's son deployed there. O'Malley's son is next to the sewer grating, so he can immediately zip across the board if necessary. I think the sewers are very important to the Court of Owls crew. A lot of their cards seem to tie into them, but we'll see as the game goes on. Visible on this side of the board as well for the Batman forces, you have Harvey Bullock using his hidden ability to deploy further forwards. You've got Officer Merkel, Commissioner Gordon just crouching behind his portable bat signal, and the GCPD cop. Also visible from here clearly is Huntress, again using her hidden ability to deploy anywhere on the board out of sight. Despite looking fairly exposed, there's no light sources nearby, and she is well out of the sight of anyone else on the Court of Owls crew. If I just travel round the board, I'll be able to show you the rest. So for this perspective, for the Court of Owls side, you can see the High Court member here in the middle of the road. Again, he's out of sight for all intents and purposes, so he's kind of skulking even if he's in the middle of the road. Henry Ballard next to him. Moving further forward because of the undercover rule, we have the Talon, William Cobb, and finally the Gotham Butcher breaking through the doors above there and in the Grant building. And yes, he has a grapple gun amongst other things, so he'll be able to get down from there quite simply. Okay, moving back to Batman, we've got Nightwing over here by the park bench in this side of the deployment zone, and Lorida. Okay, in terms of where the suspect markers were placed, both of the Batman Cruise ones were on this side of the board. There's one there and one over here on the board edges. The Court of Owls ones were here, and one in the park, as you might have seen earlier, near Officer Bullock. And then finally, there's actually some owl markers the Court of Owls has to put out, and these have effects, as you'll see when the game goes on. It ties in quite heavily to scoring and marking opponents as prey. But you've got one here, one on the building works, and yes, again, one, as you can see, in between the two seesaws in the park. Okay, right, let's move on into turn one and get this going. Okay, I've just completed the take the lead and raise the plan phases of turn one. It wasn't explosive yet, but yeah, we have hopes. In terms of cards played from the hand in the take the lead phase, the Batman crew played Die Hard, shall I say, for 2 points. We've seen that plenty of times before, and they picked Nightwing to be their nominated model. If Nightwing survives until the end of the turn without being knocked out or removed as a casualty, that'll be 2 points for the Batman crew. The Court of Owls didn't have anything to play from their hand. Nonetheless, we moved straight to the initiative roll, and if I bring you over here, you'll be able to see that in black, the Court of Owls scored 6 to the cops of 4. Sorry, not 3. That's a 4. And so yes, the Court of Owls have initiative, which is kind of crucial, really. In the raise the plan phase, the audacity tokens were distributed, and I'll just give you a quick rundown of who got them. For the Court of Owls, O'Malley's son and Strix got one, as you can see there. Of course, if I just lean around, you'll be able to see an Owl's audacity marker for the Talon, the Butcher, and of course the Talon did get one, and his over there. Okay, on the GCPD side, Huntress, Nightwing, Commissioner Gordon, of course, as leader, makes sense, and Bullock got one. Okay. Also in the raise plan phase, the High Court member has Scheming 2, which allows him to move 2 of his suspects 4 inches around the board, and he had 2 out from deployment. What he did was, the one that was here, he scooched over here a little bit, just to be out of Harvey Bullock's 3-inch revealing range. As a detective, he can reveal suspect markers from 3 inches away, and they didn't really fancy that, in case he got an order in before the Owls got initiative or something. So, yeah. They managed to do that, and this marker that was over here next to the owl marker, the suspect marker, moved just up a little bit there. So if anyone wants to come and reveal that puts them in slashing range of William Cobb, the Talon, over there. Right. Okay. Well, as I said, the Owls have the initiative, and so it's up to them to kick us off with activation. So let's move to that now. Well, kicking off proceedings, we activated Strix first, and before she moved, she, as a resource, the Court of Owls played from the hand an Owl's Tail. A lot of resources, I think, being played by the Court of Owls prospectively, because of the way that their deck works. As you can see, it costs 0 resources, and that's an awful lot of text, but I'll break it down. What they need to do is, this is how they designate targets in the opposing crew as prey. It's repeated on a few of their cards as a resource. They choose an enemy model within 4 inches of both an owl marker and a suspect marker. As you can see, Harvey Bullock, and if you recall, he was within 4 inches of a suspect marker, which was just about there. The suspect marker gets picked up. He fulfills the condition of being within 4 inches of the owl marker as well. This marks him as prey. I've put a counter on him. It's going to be joining his character card shortly, because I'm not leaving it on the board running around after him. What that means is he's well, like I said, he's now marked as prey. That doesn't do anything in of itself. However, it does tie in with several other abilities and cards that the Court of Owls has. They're all down for hunting prey, and so far Harvey Bullock is it, which is not good for him. Strix then activated. She had audacity. She moved over here. She then used her throwing knives against Harvey Bullock, because taking down the prey generally is good. Anyway, yes, and as you can see, she she had 3 dice. They're throwing weapons, so she didn't lose any dice for moving and shooting. She managed to roll a 6 on the strength die, which knocks Harvey down. There was no cover from over here, not in between him and her. 2 hits got through altogether. That's 2 blood each. So, oh no, sorry, it's only 1 blood each. So that will only be 2 blood. I'll just change that now. Sorry, my mistake, looking at the wrong line on her character card. So yes, she causes 2 blood to him, knocks him down, and yes, that's first blood to the Court of Owls. He will still get an activation, but yes, let's see what happens next. And of course I did forget to mention the second card played, this time as an objective from the Court of Owls deck during Strix's activation just now. They played the Owl's Labyrinth, which is simply that choose an enemy model marked as prey. Well, that will be Harvey Bullock. If that model moves, what it says is if that model moves during his next activation, then this card will score for 2 victory points. If not, he suffers enervating 2, and enervating will as we've seen in previous battle reports, that will reduce his effort limit by 2, which is quite powerful. So yes, it's up to him whether or not he wants to give 2 victory points away, or whether or not he's going to suffer, a combat negative, basically. And it does mean that he'd have to stay in the middle of the board with owls trying to kill him. So yeah, it's a tricky one, but we'll see how that goes. Commissioner Gordon was the first model to activate on the Batman side. He had Audacity, and he used it to first of all move up from the back of the park to where you see him now. He then used his special action to order Harvey Bullock to take cover, which gives Harvey 2 defense counters, which might come in handy given the fact that he's just been nominated as prey. He then used his tactical action to draw a bead on Strix down here to fire his automatic gun. Normally she would be out of sight because of her stealth rule. They are about 9 inches away, and that stealth means that she can only be targeted up to 8 inches away. However, she is smartly standing within range of this light source, which wasn't taken out, which I did consider, but then overruled in favour of throwing some knives at Harvey instead. She efforted twice with her acrobatic skill to dodge some of the incoming bullets, reducing the incoming dice from 4 to 2. Those 2 remaining dice rolled a 1 and 2 respectively, and failed to do any damage to her. They failed to connect, which prevented any more damage coming her way. So just the 2 effort stun damage there for her. Okay, that concludes Commissioner Gordon's turn. Next up to activate was the Gotham Butcher for the Court of Owls, swooping down to join the fray. With the scent of blood in the air, and some points to score. First of all, before he moved, he had Audacity, if you recall. He played the Shadow Claw from the hand as a resource for 1 resource point, one of the 2 resource points that the Court of Owls has at the moment due to Nightwing's influence. Here's the text, but basically it's in 4 inches extra movement as long as he's moving towards the prey, and that's Harvey. So yes, with his grapple, he engaged his grapple gun to move all the way from the top down there, all the way up here, all the way over here, sorry. And yes, he attacks, and as you can see, he really laid about himself. He has claws, which means every successful hit does 1 blood, 1 stun. 6 hits got through, every single one. Harvey was knocked down, which really meant that there was really nothing much he could do about it, even with those 2 defense dice extra he got, which he didn't make any difference. Yes, Harvey is unfortunately dead. So yes, he's being removed as a casualty, which scores for the Court of Owls the Talon's Claw. It's very simple. Remove an enemy model marked as prey as a casualty for 2 victory points. So yes, that's 2 victory points instantaneously for the Court of Owls. They're off the scoreboard. Incidentally, the resource he played, the Shadow Claw, I did forget one thing about that. In the event that the Butcher actually made base contact with Harvey, which he did, it allows the Court of Owls to move one of their owl markers 4 inches. So what they did was the one that was in the middle of this construction work, they moved it just straight down here. So who knows what plans that has for them, but yes, so blood scored, death, and points. So altogether a successful turn for the court. Okay, over to the Batman crew. Nightwing next up for the Batman crew, as I said, and yes, he had audacity. He used his acrobatic ability to move all the way from here over to here. Didn't have to engage his grapple gun. He's pretty nimble as they go, to be honest, as you'd expect. As you can see, with his tactical action, he placed a suspect marker, which he imminently made a snitch, which we've seen lots of times before. It's worth 3 points if that snitch marker is outside of any outside of 4 inches of any of the Court of Owls models, which is looking pretty inevitable that will be the case. So yes, those 3 points will be very valuable to the Batman forces, since owls do keep appearing out of nowhere. Okay, right, he didn't have anything else to do, so that concludes his activation. High Court Lady activated next for the Court of Owls, and all she did not have audacity, was to move forwards just to in front of this bin, probably the least pleasant smell she's had all week. So yeah, that's all she's got to do, so moving on. Officer Merkel activating next. He did not have audacity either, so all he did was move up. He was inspired by Commissioner Gordon. His original plan was to stay at the back and just fire his riot gun at the Gotham Butcher there. Unfortunately, Gotham Butcher had taken a camo vest from purchasable war gear, so technically, despite all the appearances, he is stealthy, and so again, Officer Merkel was just 9 inches away and couldn't see him somehow. And yes, so he had to console himself with moving forwards and using his inspiration to place down a suspect marker, and moving to the assistance of the Commissioner, who's now in a park with some very dangerous characters. Henry Ballard, one of the Talons, decided he'd activate next. He was standing over here. He was inspired by the High Court member, but he doesn't have audacity, if you recall, so what he did was he's to move around here and put down a suspect marker. Also, playing from the hand, as an objective, the court's secure bases from the Court of Owls deck. There's a lot of text there, but I'll break it down for you. They choose one friendly owl marker, and they're choosing this one at the base of the construction work. And for each enemy activation after this, we add a counter to the card, as long as there are no enemy models within 4 inches of that owl marker. So whilst this owl marker's off on its own, there's a count. Once that count reaches 3, this card scores, and the count goes up 1 every time an enemy model activates but doesn't end up nearby. So yes, this card basically stays here for the entire game from what I can see, and yeah, if the cops leave it alone at all, then it will eventually score for 2 points. So yes, a bit of a scramble to get over there, I guess, but we'll see. Duly noting the contents of the last activation from Henry Ballard, the Huntress activated next. First of all, she was up here. Remember, she aimed and fired her crossbow at Henry Ballard, who had moved into line of sight range to her, and she engaged with her special action. She engaged rapid fire, giving her an extra die, and when all was said and done, she hit twice, including the strength die, to do 3 blood damage. It's normally 2 blood damage each, but Henry Ballard has invulnerability 1, meaning one of those is ignored. Having done this, she then hopped down off the scaffolding down to the owl marker, where she is in base contact with it. Okay, so yes, she'll be preventing the countdown climbing up, but she has come down into a more dangerous area, shall we say. The High Court member next up for the Court of Owls, he did not have audacity, despite the rule for giving leaders audacity doesn't apply in this crew, since their leader is really not that able to use it very well. He moved over here and just over to the Batman suspect marker. He doesn't have audacity, like I said, and he can't inspire himself, so he can't reveal it, but you know, maybe next turn. In an attempt to run down activations in order to force more decisive moves elsewhere, GCPD Cop 1 activated next. All he did, he was in the same position really as Officer Merkel, except he didn't even have a riot gun to potentially fire. So what he did was to just, without audacity, he moved forward, but using the inspiration granted by Commissioner Gordon, he was able to place it on the suspect marker. Activating the O'Malley's son next for the Court of Owls. He opted not to use the sewer gratings as was possibly originally planned. Figured he'd be better used over here, using his manipulate action instead to put down a suspect marker in the park, having moved in there first. Yes, so moving on. Finally, for GCPD, Lorida, the SWAT officer, decided he was going to activate, and yes, he doesn't have audacity, annoyingly, and all he could do really was move forward into base contact with that our suspect marker. In order, maybe next turn he'll get a chance to reveal it. Unfortunately, if all the models I didn't give a radio to who needed it was this guy, he could have done with revealing that, but never mind. Okay, and he didn't even with a custom assault submachine gun, he couldn't shoot the Talon William Cobb, because William Cobb has been given a camo vest, meaning again he's just a little bit too far out of range to be shot at. So well, that's it for him. Next activation will be the last one of the turn. And concluding the first turn's activations much the same as they began, William Cobb activated as a Talon for the Court of Owls. First of all, Owls Knight was played as a resource for the second time, meaning that it now costs one resource marker. One resource point, shall I say. It marks the SWAT officer as prey, removing the Court of Owls suspect marker from, in base contact with him here, and Lorida being within 4 inches of this owl marker. What that means is that he was marked as prey, and then William Cobb moved into base contact with him. Both sides efforted in the ensuing attack that followed from the knives, efforted to the maximum, shall I say. Both sides really wanting to either prevent or make sure that the kill happened, and unfortunately 5 hits got through. William Cobb has combo with those knives, and he got a lot of hits in, and Lorida was only able to block 1, unfortunately. So that was 5 blood damage done to the SWAT officer, whose endurance is 5, and so he is dead as well. Didn't even get a chance to use his gun. I've played like a bit of a plum for the police, I'm going to have to be honest, but hey, have to admit that when it happens. But yes, in so doing this, Talon's Claw was scored as an objective for the court, 2 points, and as they did earlier in the turn, they removed an enemy model marked as prey as a casualty, which yes, they just did that. They're out of resource points for the turn, and but yes, it's the end of the turn, so we're going to go to the recount phase to clean up. Right, cleanup phase just done, and both cards scored for the GCPD or Batman crew, whichever you want, interchangeable I suppose, from the cards they played during the course of the turn. Both Nightwing, instigated, shall we say, die hard because he wasn't taken out, so 2 points there. And the Snitch, as you can see, still no enemies within 4 inches, so nice easy 3 points for the Batman crew. Okay, a bit of yes, each model carrying stun damage. That's Strix and the Talon William Cobb both take off one of their stun markers, and yes, I think we're ready to move into turn 2. Okay, they take the lead and raise the plan phases for turn 2 just been completed, and yes, pretty uneventful again in terms of cards, only the one played in either phase. The initiative roll came up as a 6-3 in the court's favour again, quite important now because both sides have got models in close proximity to each other, and both were kind of banking on getting the initiative this turn. Because of this, this card has a whole lot more significance than it might have done just a minute ago. The court in the raise the plan phase, so the second phase, not the first phase as you'd normally say, there's a subtle difference. Played Terrible Accident now for 3 points, so it's a biggie. They're challenging themselves to remove the enemy boss as a casualty. So intriguingly, they don't play it as a reaction in the third phase, they actually play it now. It's kind of like they're challenging themselves to do it, or at least announcing their intent. As happens in the comics an awful lot, there's an awful lot of Talons creeping up on people and saying that the Court of Owls has nominated them to die or something, and then giving them a chance to kick him in the nuts and run away or something, you know. So here we go, that's what they're doing. Commissioner Gordon, the Court of Owls has sentenced you to die for 3 points, so big deal, and the Court of Owls will be going first, so I wonder what's going to be happening. But never mind that, let's move on. In terms of audacity, I didn't put the counters out, such an idiot. Okay, well I'll tell you and then I'll put them out anyway. For the court, you're going to have the Gotham Butcher, obviously, Strix, William Cobb, and Henry Ballard there are all going to have audacity. In terms of the Batman crew, you're going to have Commissioner Gordon, Nightwing, Huntress, and what's his face here, Officer Merkel. I'll put those counters out and then I'll get on with it. Okay, right, over to activations. Yes, the Gotham Butcher activated first for the Court of Owls and thundered into Commissioner Gordon there after nominating him to be killed. So yeah, why not? In so doing, they beforehand they just removed this suspect marker, which I shall do now, and played an owl's tail as a resource to mark Commissioner Gordon as prey, as you can see by the counter just next to him there. Both sides efforted to the maximum as they possibly could. As you can see, Commissioner Gordon there has taken a bit of a pounding when all was said and done. I gave from purchasable war gear, I gave the Gotham Butcher ancient training, which gives him the Master Fighter roar, which just made it really easy for him to hit Commissioner Gordon there. And despite the spirited block rolls, 2 of the 3 came out as a success on 5+. So yeah, it's still enough to cause 3 hits. So combine the hits with, each hit doing 1 blood, 1 stun, combine that with the 3 stun taken for the efforts, and Commissioner Gordon is knocked out, as you can see there by the little counter next to him. So that was that. Helena Bertolini, the Huntress, activated for the Batman crew's side first this turn. She hopped over the barrier and used her manipulate action. She did have audacity, recall, to reveal the suspect marker that was in front of her. No making her into prey later on in the turn, I don't think. And yes, in doing this, she scored from the hand Wrong Place Kid for 3 points. It's Harvey Bullock's signature card, and his spirit of dodgy, dirty cop dealing is alive and well from beyond the grave, because all it requires for her to do is to reveal an enemy suspect marker at least 6 inches away from any other models in her crew which might have the cop trait, and she is well on her own. She's facing down an owl. Unfortunately, she couldn't move and shoot and reveal the suspect marker anyway, and this scores a mighty 3 points, so well worth it, I think. Up next, we activated Strix for the Court of Owls, and she didn't waste any time. She vaulted over from the roundabout over to Commissioner Gordon's knocked out body, and then proceeded to make him a corpse because she hit him for an awful lot of hits. He's unconscious, can't defend himself, and she hit with every single attack. So yes, slice and dice. So yes, in so doing, she would have easily fulfilled the criteria for terrible accident as played earlier in the turn. So that'd be 3 points for the Court of Owls come the end. And actually no, it scores immediately, sorry. It goes at, because you see that little star symbol there next to the 2, that means it will score immediately, meaning that they could potentially, no, they couldn't score it again because they had to play in the second phase. Never mind, just ignore that. But yeah, they scored it immediately for some reason. I don't know if that's pertinent or not. Maybe it will be in future interactions with other cards, but never mind. In so doing that, whenever the Court of Owls does actually kill a model, I haven't shown you this so far, I have been moving the owls around, but I haven't shown you, they can move one of their owl markers up to 4 inches, and what that means is we've actually had a new one join this one over here next to Huntress. So yeah, there you go. Okay, I think that wraps up this turn, and we'll move on to the cops, who are starting to look very short on models, but not too bad for points. Officer Merkel up next, and he cannily decided that with the Commissioner gone, he needed to take his prospects elsewhere. He was actually planning on doing his party piece of shooting shooting an enemy model, then moving up and arresting it, but it wasn't to be. He was back here, and he did train his riot gun on the Gotham Butcher, who had just recently knocked out and knocked down his boss. But unfortunately, as you can see, only 1 hit. Well, 2 hits got through, but I forgot that the Gotham Butcher himself is huge, which means he ignores 2 stun damage, so that was reduced down to 2. So yes, from 4 down to 2. So yeah, he wasn't going to be going anywhere this time. And yeah, so with no arrest on the cards, Officer Merkel does have a grapple gun. I always give him a grapple gun, it's good. And he was able to jet away over here, and yes, over here next to this owl marker, which has still got the Court Secret Bases card ticking down on it, which means yeah, so far it's on a counter of 0, so it's not going anywhere soon. Okay, over to the Court of Owls. Henry Ballard, the Talon from olden times, activated next for the court. He simply strode up to the Huntress and attacked her in close combat. He opted to go with his claws as opposed to his owl knife because he wanted to see because the stun damage might might risk Huntress if she started using effort to defend herself, and his effort limit was reduced from his earlier damage, so there was a bit of mind games going on. In the end, the Huntress did effort 3 times, as you can see from that big set of stars there. Henry Bellard efforted twice as much as he could to try and redress the balance as much as he can. When all was said and done, only 1 hit got through, and it was the strength die on a 6, however, which she couldn't block, so dealing 1 stun and 1 blood damage to go with the 3 stuns she'd already taken, and a knockdown effect into the bargain. Right, over to the GCPD. Nightwing up next for the GCPD. Just looking at his cards, the hand of cards is pretty abysmal for the GCPD right now. Nothing they can do. So he's just looking to take people out who haven't activated yet. So there's to redress the balance in models somewhat. He used his grapple gun to move all the way from over there into the park next to O'Malley's son, and it was an easy knockout in the end. Combo with his double stun dealing sticks. He did put 1 effort in to counteract what O'Malley's son did as well, but it was really all for nothing in the end. And so yes, O'Malley's son is knocked out and won't be activating this turn. William Cobb the Talon up next for the Court of Owls, and I've removed the wire fencing here for your benefit and mine, so I can film it easier. He vaulted over the fence. I gave him from Portugal gear fast as well, so it gave him extra movement. So yeah, he was able to just get over here and put down a suspect marker right there. In doing so, he managed to play the Shadow Claw from the hand of the Court of Owls, which he plays now, and it's a simple instant score. Place a suspect within 4 inches of an enemy model that has at least 1 blood marker, and Huntress there has taken 1 blood damage in the last activation when she had a tussle with Henry Ballard. So yes, that scores immediately 2 points for the Court of Owls and completing the activation for now. Finally, for the GCPD, the Cop 1 activated, and all he did was to move into base contact. He doesn't have Audacity, if you remember. He moved to base contact with O'Malley's son, who's currently knocked out by Nightwing. Can't arrest him, doesn't have the ability to do so, would need a special action to do that, but if O'Malley's son doesn't come round from unconsciousness, maybe he can do it next turn. Even if he still doesn't have Audacity or whatever, he can do it there. He's just threatening the peace, and there's nothing much else he can do at the moment. So yeah, moving on. Minding his own business over here, the High Court member has simply revealed the suspect marker for Batman's crew that was just over here. That's all he was going to do for his turn. He doesn't have Audacity, but if I just reach underneath myself, he did play from the hand as an objective an Owl's Tail, which have at least 2 friendly owl markers and 1 friendly suspect within 4 inches of the same enemy model. If we return to Huntress, you remember that suspect marker and these 2 owl markers are certainly within 4 inches, so that's another 2 points scored for the league from this unlikely source. Yes, Huntress stayed there over here to prevent the counter ticking up for the Court Secret Bases card, but it has rather turned it round. So yes, quite a good bit of interplay I'm noticing from this Court of Owls deck. Actually, you can punish people for sitting on owl markers, you can punish them from keeping away from them. And the final activation for turn 2, the High Court Lady activated and simply put down a suspect marker. She was sorely tempted to use her hidden gun against the police officer there. She would only have lost 1 die from the 4 she'd have had due to the cover, but the Court of Owls deck does seem to rely quite heavily on having suspect markers out, and they don't have many at the moment. So yes, suspect markers it is. Right, let's move on to the recount phase and clean things up. Okay, the recount phase just completed, and the O'Malley's son model was the only model that was knocked out, but he did manage to pass his test to recover from knocked out. He didn't even need the re-roll he'd normally get. He just rolled a 5, and that was exactly what he needed to score. So the other models, across the board, there was a whole bunch of individual stun damage removed here and there. Gotham Butcher still carrying quite a lot from his fun and games this turn, but yeah, he don't care. Look at him. He's having a whale of a time. And yes, in terms of scored cards, if you recall, Terrible Accident scored during the course of the turn, but I'm just saying it so now, so for 3 points. No cards otherwise played. from the hands. No, quite an abysmal turn for the Batman crew. Their cards have just not been coming up, and their ability to cycle through them is severely curtailed by the lack of suspect markers they can reveal from the Court of Owls. The Court of Owls tend to put them down, then pick them up very quickly. So yeah, that is having an impact on this deck, and I'm really intrigued by how these two forces are interacting with each other. But yes, we'll continue the fight into turn 3 and see how it goes. Turn 3 commences, and the take the lead and raise the plan phases are both completed. A lot of things to recount as of right now. The no cards played in phase 1, however the initiative roll came up a 6-3 in the Batman team's favour this time, so yep, that is a bit of a swing around, so they'll be going first this turn. In terms of cards played, like I said, none in the first phase, however the Court of Owls managed to play 3 cards from their hand in the second phase, the raise the plan phase. First of all, another terrible accident came up. Forgot to mention that Nightwing was nominated as the Batman crew's second in command, so he's the boss now, and he is the one who now the Court of Owls have to try and kill for a massive 3 points during the course of the turn. They also played Gotham is Ours. That's one we haven't seen yet in a scoring sense anyway. It's played in this second phase. It scores at the end of the turn. The Court of Owls, here's the text, but I'll just summarise it. The Court of Owls choose 2 scenery elements. They chose the park as one and the construction site as another. The Batman forces choose 1 other scenery element, so they chose the Batmobile, because why not? And what happens is the Court of Owls have to have 1 suspect of their own within 4 inches of each of those scenery elements. So yes, it's not looking very likely to score since the Batmobile is all the way over there, but they certainly succeed for the other 2, and it gets this card interestingly out of their hand, so it keeps the cycle going. Finally, they also played The Mission, which is William Cobb's, that's him, his own objective card. Choose a model with the reanimated owl trait. That's any of the Talons basically. They chose the Gotham Butcher because he has that trait. This chosen model removes the enemy boss, that's Nightwing, who has to be marked as prey as a casualty. Nightwing isn't marked as prey yet, but they've got until until the end, until Nightwing dies basically, to score it. If he's marked as prey in the meantime and Talon the Gotham Butcher manages to do it, then they'll score this card. Okay, carrying on, we'll just go through who gets Audacity. There's only 4 models left on the Batman side, so it's Nightwing, GCPD Cop 1, Officer Merkel, and the currently knocked down Huntress. And on the Court of Owls crew side, you've got Gotham Butcher, Strix, Henry Ballard, and you might have noticed the Talon William Cobb has it there. Okay, phew, that was a lot. So let's get on and see how the activations go. It's the Batman crew to go first. Well, seeing his name in lights marked for death, Nightwing decided he'd go first, and he activated, he vaulted over the Gotham Butcher and proceeded to do an absolute blitzkrieg with his combat batons, or whatever he calls them, his electric batons, I think. And yes, he caused a mighty 10 stun damage to the Gotham Butcher, who, as you can see, is knocked out. That means that whoever does kill Nightwing, if anyone does this turn, it probably won't be him, which will deny a whole bunch of victory points. Unfortunately, that's kind of what the Batman crew's reduced to at this point. Their objective crew card hand is a bit naff, and yeah, they'll be trying to work there to do some things to cycle the deck, but it's just not working for them and getting cards they can score right now. But denying the opponent victory points is almost as good. William Cobb activated next, the Talon for the Court of Owls. He moved up behind Officer Merkel, who he didn't really want to getting that riot gun into any good effect today. And yes, he laid about him. Both sides efforted 3 times, the maximum they could, because Officer Merkel knew that there'd be no stun damage coming his way as a result of this. And William Cobb just decided to redress the balance and put the dice back in that had just been taken out from him. When all was said and done, William Cobb actually hit with every single one of his die, including the strength die. However, Officer Merkel blocked with every single one of his block dice, so in the end that resulted in 4 blood damage going through, which is not enough by 1 point to kill Officer Merkel. The odds were on that it would, but it didn't. Having done that, the Court of Owls then played as a resource from their hand, interestingly after the fact rather than before. They wanted to see if they were going to kill him first. They played Talon's Claw as a resource, and what that means is that it's basically marking Officer Merkel as prey. This suspect marker that was over there before, actually in the Raise the Plan phase, the High Court member moved it up into the middle using his scheme ability. I forgot to say that, there was so much else going on, but he does. There's been some markers moving around, I'm sure you'll see. So they'll be removing that suspect marker and marking Officer Merkel as prey. Having done that, they also played the Owl's Labyrinth as a resource, which on Officer Merkel, choosing a model marked as prey, that's him. If he moves during his activation, he hasn't activated yet, then they'll score 2 victory points. If he doesn't move, then he suffers enervating 2, which will pretty much mean that he's dead, next time someone even so much as walks over and pushes him slightly. Okay, right, let's move on. Finally, some card movement for the GCPD. GCPD cop number 1 activated, and first of all, he was in base contact with O'Malley's son. If you recall, he hit him whilst he was knocked down. This was for 2 damage. This was sufficient to knock him out. Using his special action, that was his tactical action. His special action was then used to arrest O'Malley's son, taking him out of action, and then he moved over to the suspect marker for the Court of Owls over here, and he is revealing it with his special bonus manipulate activation for being inspired by Nightwing, because he has a radio, which is the first time that's come up. Hooray! By doing so, he managed to score Comb Through Everything for the GCPD. Reveal enemy suspect marker, and they get an extra card to choose from when they redraw. So that's going to hopefully be really useful. We could get some things on the board for them. So yes, finally something happening for the Batman crew. Scenting Blood, Henry Ballard activated next, and first of all, he was in base contact with Huntress over here, and he used his tactical action to really lay into her while she was knocked down. With his owl knife, despite having re-rolls on all the dice, he only managed to get 3 hits onto her, and she couldn't even defend herself. But that's 3 more blood damage to her, further impairing her abilities to fight again in this game. He then played from the hand as a resource the Owl's Labyrinth, which affected Officer Merkel as he is the prey. I'll just show you the card. There you go. What it does is, because Officer Merkel was next to an owl marker, it actually teleports him to being in contact with a sewer marker. So he moved over, so Officer Merkel appeared over here, and Henry Ballard duly had his movement action left over and moved into base contact with him. It basically spreads the GCPD out a bit more and moves them away from that owl marker, which is still waiting to tick down its the Court's Secure Bases card. Right, moving on. Officer Merkel for the GCPD activated. He was over here next to this. He did move, which sadly for the cops did score Owl's Labyrinth as played on him earlier. He was dependent upon him not moving, but he kind of wanted to for what's coming later. He moved up and placed this suspect marker in between himself and Huntress. He then used his riot gun with its single remaining die after movement to have a shot at William Cobb, but it missed unfortunately, and so that concluded his turn. Well, we went with Strix next for the Court of Owls, and she did the easy thing, which is to move into base contact with Dick Grayson as Nightwing there and attack him with her paired katanas. She is quite fit. She is truly fearsome with those things. Double blood per hit that gets through, and she's overwhelming with them, which means that he's at -1 on his defense rolls. She went in and she hit him 3 times after his defense rolls. He did manage to block 1 of the hits, which stopped him from dying, as you'll see. Both sides efforted it to the maximum, as you can see there, but that's not the main event. It's those 6 blood tokens we should be looking at. He is endurance 7 though, so he is alive, and there's not an awful lot left that can actually damage him now. Huntress finally activated for the Batman crew, and she stood up with impaired movement because she was knocked down, if you recall, and she moved around the suspect marker that was in between her and revealed it to play valuable commodities from the Batman crew's hand. We've seen this lots of times before. It's turned into a loot marker, and she claims it. It'll be on her character card, and she has to remain with it until the end of the game to score those 3 points. Not the easiest task in the world, given the fact that she is up against the Talon and Henry Ballard over there, but you know, it's possible certainly, and better than nothing. They need to score some points. And rounding off the turn's activations, we have the last two Court of Owls crew members. The High Court member moved around from this side of the car to the other, and the High Court lady moved through the gate of the park to just inside. They did not have audacity, so that concludes their turns, and there were no cards played from their hands, so we'll just go to the recount phase now. Okay, recount finished, and a lot of stun damage came off, one per model. So yes, there's a lot of models carrying damage here and there across the board, which is quite interesting. The Gotham Butcher did manage to resuscitate himself from being knocked out. He did require the reroll, so those legendary Talon regenerative abilities coming to the fore there. None of the three cards that were played at the beginning of the turn, neither Terrible Accident, Gotham is Ours, nor The Mission, managed to score for the Court of Owls. None of the criteria were met during the course of the turn, so yeah, that's them gone. That's it. Still, I don't know who's winning. I suspect I know the Law deck has had some difficulties, but they do tend to score a lot anyway with the cards they do get through, but we'll find out. It's the last turn. Let's see who can score those last minute cards. Okay, coming into the take the lead and raise the plan phases of the fourth turn, the first and second phases respectively, I can report that the Batman crew won the initiative roll, and the Owls managed to play Terrible Accident once again from their hand for 3 points. They are really wanting to kill Nightwing again. He's still not marked as prey though, so they might have some difficulties getting to him. That's still Officer Merkel. What am I going to say next? Oh yes, of course, Audacity tokens were dished out. On the Owl side, you've got William Cobb, Henry Ballard, and the two over here, Gotham Butcher and Strix. Of course, the Batman crew gave Nightwing Audacity token, along with GCPD Cop 1, Officer Merkel, and Huntress, who's still carrying that loot. Yes, it's the same, you know, it's all the models who are still active on their side, to be perfectly honest. So, okay, those last few activations are going to come into play now. Nightwing had to be first for the GCPD and Batman crew because he had just been marked for death and he's worth 3 victory points to the court if they managed to kill him. So he activated, and the first thing he did was to blast Strix unconscious quickly with his electric batons. It was actually a much more tight dice roll than it appears, but he does 2 stun per hit that gets through, and the combo eventually did it, and the strength die. So yeah. He then used his grapple gun, because he had a turn without using it last turn, and he managed to jet off 19 inches away from this horrible looking beast over here, into the corner of the, into the back of the board here. And yes, it's going to be very difficult for anyone on the Court of Owls side to catch him. Bear in mind that despite having a grapple gun himself, the Gotham Butcher is knocked down and thus will suffer impaired movement. Right, carrying on. The Talon, William Cobb, activated for the Court of Owls, and he snuck up on on Huntress, knowing that she's a high-value target still. Both sides efforted to the maximum again, and yes, he unfortunately only managed to do the 1 blood damage through after all was said and done with the strength die. Her defences are quite formidable, even to someone with combo and rerolls. So yes, having done that, he then played from the hand the Court Secure Bases again, which is the same one as this owl marker, which is currently ticking down every time the Batman crew plays without a model being nearby. He actually played, this is the one, yeah, there's the text, and he played it on this owl down here. And there are just enough models in the GCPD crew left to score this card, so we'll see if that actually happens for them. Okay, and yes, that's it for him. Not a particularly auspicious turn for him, but yeah, possible points on the board by the end. Officer Merkel, never a dull moment with Officer Merkel. Okay, he's just activated. He used his riot gun first to open fire on William Cobb. Only the strength die got him, but that was all that counted. That was enough to take the Talon up to being knocked out from all the exertions he's been making. And we all know what's coming next, don't we? Yes, he's going to move up and then arrest, he's going to destroy the railings, and then he's going to arrest the Talon with his special action, which puts him just within 4 inches, I pre-measured this before, of that owl marker, which stops its countdown 1 to go before it scores the court secure bases. So yes, that card is still potentially going to score, but they have to get rid of Officer Merkel first. And yes, of course, having arrested the model, he then plays Get Them Off the Streets for the Batman crew. 3 points, he's arrested a model. So yes, they're back in the game. Henry Bellard activated for the court next, and he moved up. He had audacity. He simply placed a suspect marker there, and by doing so, he managed to score Shadow's Claw. The Shadow Claw, sorry. Place a suspect within 4 inches of an enemy with at least 1 blood marker. Well, both Huntress and Officer Merkel have blood damage on them, so that scores 2 points for the league. Yes, it's getting quite dicey, and I think it's quite close as well. After doing so, as a resource, the Owl's Labyrinth was played, and what that does is an enemy marker marked as prey, that's Officer Merkel, has to be put in contact with a sewer marker because he's so close to those owls. So I'm actually going to move him over to be in base contact with this sewer marker here, and that's where he'll end up. Okay, right, moving on. GCPD Cop 1 had a simple turn. Despite having audacity, all he really wanted to do was to prevent this owl marker from counting down its court secure bases thing. So he just moved up there and had finished his turn. He can't put down another suspect marker because there's one next to him already, unfortunately. Yes, and Officer Merkel's adventures through the sewers have come to a final end here, as the High Court member, without audacity activated, but was nonetheless able to easily draw a bead with his gun on Officer Merkel, and brought the cops traverses through the sewers to an abrupt end. This did actually, unfortunately, finish off Officer Merkel. He was down to his last point of life, if you recall. This did, however, score Talon's Claw from the hand of the court. For 2 points, they killed the enemy marked as prey, and Officer Merkel has long been such. Yes, also forgot to mention before that this owl marker here has since managed to succeed in its countdown to get the court secure bases all the way built up to 3, and that will score 2 points as well for the court. Okay, very last activations now. And the last activation I'll cover for today, because it's the only one that can actually score any cards now. The Huntress decided she would move forward and put down a snitch marker. I'll just pan out so you get a better idea as to where she is on the board. So yes, snitch came out of the hand for 3 easy points at the very last gasp. And there's very little that the court can do about it now. And yes, so there we are. 3 points. I'm going to count that at the end of the turn. Right, so I'll just go. So that's it. The Gotham Butcher is still to activate, but there really is nothing he can do. There is a few cards in the Court of Owls deck that could get him up and running. He could easily just take out this cop, most likely, but there's no cards that would score points to do that, so there's very little point doing it. Right, in terms of scored cards for the end, before I do a count up, Terrible Accident, which was played at the beginning, doesn't score because Nightwing is still alive and well over there. Well, he's on 1 point of life left, but there's simply nothing left that can reach him. Only Strix could really get at him from over there, and he made sure to knock her out nice and early. Valuable Commodities does score for Law, because the Huntress around the corner there will definitely not be being caught. And finally, the court secure bases card relating to this owl marker won't score because that cop will never, it was never going to count down in time, basically, whilst that cop was still there. So right, I will now go over, sort the cards out into their respective piles, and do the count, and we'll see who's won. Okay, time for the final count, and I've got the Batman cards, the score cards in my hand, so I'll start with them. We go 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 16, 19. Not the biggest score for them, but it was, like I said, it was a bit of a slow day, and they got some of their signature cards in though. So onto the Court of Owls. 2, 4, 6, 8, 11, 13, 14, 15, 17, 19 as well. So 19 all. It's a tie, a draw for the accolades. Okay, that was a really good fun game. Lots of things happened. Interesting to see how these decks interacted with each other. Like I said, it was a slow one for the Law crew, but maybe that's because of the nature of the crew they were fighting against. They just weren't. I think I commented on this before. There weren't any suspect markers for them to pick up. The court tends to put them down and then immediately pick them up to turn people into prey and things like that. So yeah, I mean that hamstrung their attempts to cycle their deck and get to the snitches and the get them off the streets cards. But yeah, I don't know though. I mean, I also think I played pretty badly as the Batman crew. I haven't used Commissioner Gordon before, and I think I was several times throughout I was thinking, I should really have distributed the equipment better, or just position the models differently. But then my relative inexperience with the Court of Owls would also have shone through on that occasion. I don't think I positioned the leader really badly. He wasn't inspiring anyone after that first turn, and even then he only inspired one person. So the Court of Owls really needs to be able to put suspect markers down in order to start influencing and placing prey. You don't want to be placing suspect markers with talons who are just about to be stabbing people, because they can't do both in the same turn, and there's only 4 turns in the game. Anyway, never mind. Lots to think on. Good fun. Looking forward to doing it again. I'm Shieldwall100, and thank you very much for watching. If there's any feedback, I'd very much appreciate it in the comments below. Thank you to all my subscribers. It really does make this worthwhile. And I do appreciate all the feedback I get, and I will try to respond and improve with constructive criticism, of course. Thank you very much, and goodbye.